Hey everybody, welcome to Film Music Media. My name is Kai Savas. We have a real treat today. We're going behind the music of Weird, the Al Yankovic story. I'm here with the one and only Weird Al Yankovic, the songwriter, the producer, and the writer of the film. And we got Zach Robinson and Leo Birenberg here, the co-composers of the score of the film. Guys, thank you so much for sitting down for this. It's so exciting.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So to start off, I mean, Al, I think I'm just gonna start off with you because this all comes from you. It comes from your career and your and everything that you've kind of laid out up to this point. And I mean, you've from the beginning you've utilized parody as this beautiful thing to have fun, but not doing it in any demeaning way. Just kind of finding things that have kind of floated up to the zeitgeist of pop culture and finding a way to just kind of have fun with it and almost in a complimentary way. So I'm curious, what was your draw to parody as a young person, and why make it? Like, why did you want to be in a career of this?
It wasn't some premeditated thing. I didn't decide when I was, a kid that, this was my life. I was going to be Weird Al for a living. But like all 8-year-olds, I made fun of the songs on the radio. I would change the words around to amuse my friends. And I think every young kid goes through that at some point in their life. And I just kind of never grew out of it. And my problem exacerbated when I started listening to the Dr. Demento radio show, because then I found all these kindred spirits, people that had made careers doing funny music, like Spike Jones and Stan Freberg and Alan Sherman and Spike Jones, all these amazing people. And it kind of opened my mind. And even that, I didn't think like this is my life's calling, but it was a huge interest of mine. I sort of accidentally cut a career because I never thought, that my life would take this turn.
Yeah, and I honestly think because you really started with your music, of course, and I think music videos at the time were a huge thing, and your music videos utilized that visual, medium to enhance the parodies more. So of course the songs were fantastic, but then you had these amazingly creative, awesome music videos. So I'm curious, when did you decide to, because I think your first one was like the Complete Al was a mockumentary in '85, and then you did UHF and of course your Weird Al show. So you've always kind of permeated into the like film and television thing. Why did you want to kind of expand on that visually, and of course leading up to today with Weird?
I've always wanted to be more active in TV and film. I haven't had that many opportunities. So doing the albums felt steady, and I had 100% control over that as well, which was nice, because anytime you do a movie or even a TV production, you're working with an army of people, and it's always, a joint effort, which is great. But, being a singer-songwriter, performer, you kind of get to do it all in a way. So that, that was very enticing to me. But yeah, I enjoy, especially for a movie like Weird, it was just amazing to work with so many people who are working really at the top of their game. And the entire thing was just a joy.
Yeah. And it was so great. It was so funny. And I just, for people listening, I want to kind of go back and touch upon the origin of Weird, because of course it was that amazing Funny or Die short in 2010. And you had Aaron Paul, playing yourself, and it was just kind of a spoof trailer on the musical biopics. And if anyone was going to make a perfect parody of musical biopics, it would have to be you. So where did that idea from the original Funny or Die short come from? Was that just Eric, that he come up with that and bring it to you, and you're just like, let's do it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the gem of the idea came from Eric. He'd been doing some fake movie trailers for Funny or Die, which is where he worked at the time. He just done a trailer called Gobstopper, which was sort of a dark, gritty reboot of Willy Wonka, with Christopher Lloyd playing this really sinister character, and it was hilarious. It was very dark and bizarre. And I was following Eric on Twitter, and I was aware of his stuff. And then I heard from our mutual friend Patton Oswalt that Eric wanted to do the same thing, but do like a fake biopic about me. And I said, I got to talk to Eric. I'd love to collaborate with him on this. So we got together over coffee at Primo's Coffee on Sunset Boulevard. We watched a bunch of movie trailers on a laptop and threw out some ideas. And then he went off and did the Funny or Die thing, which was viral and was great. But and everybody at the time was like, oh, this should be a real movie. And we're like, yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think it's what it should be right now.
Right.
But 3 years ago, after Bohemian Rhapsody came out and won all those awards, and I really enjoyed the movie, but it bugged me because they took so many liberties with facts and chronology. And that's what kind of turned the key in my head. I thought, okay, maybe we can do a Weird Al biopic if it starts out semi-normal, but then just goes completely off the rails. So that's what I pitched to Eric, and he was like, "Yeah, let's do that."
That's amazing. And yeah, so the film itself is just fantastic, and like any good parody, it finds, I don't know, how would you describe parody in your own words? To me, it's like this thing, it's like an inside joke for humanity, where it's like we kind of if aliens invaded us tomorrow, they would watch any parody and be like, what is this? Because it's like it's not really commenting directly on these certain tropes or certain like visual language that we know, that we just get it. It's kind of like these things, and it can be kind of on the nose and jokey. But I'm curious to you, how do you define satire or parody?
They're the two are very similar, and some people interpose them, and maybe I don't even have it right. But as far as the way that I define it as parody is when you take an existing composition or intellectual property or anything, and you twist it a little bit and make it funny. And satire is very much the same thing, except it's making a comment on whatever you're parodying. So most of my recorded catalog is parody, but there are a few that would be considered satire because they're making fun of the subject matter. Like Smells Like Nirvana is making a comment about Nirvana, and my Lady Gaga parody, Performed This Way, is about Lady Gaga. And so there's a few in there that would be considered satire, but I think most would fall in the context of parody.
Absolutely, yeah. So
and the movie, I guess, would be satire because we're kind of making fun of the whole format that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, you're just making fun of the whole the formula of the biopic, the musical biopic, right, which I think is just fantastic because it is. I mean, as great as those biopics are, which I enjoy them too, it's just like they have a formula that, every seems like every songwriter that's ever blown up has gone through the same paces of, getting into the dark stuff and coming out on the other end. But then the way you guys play with that is fantastic. Yeah. So I'm curious. My
parents were super supportive and loving, and that doesn't fly in a rock biopic. So we had to make that a big subplot of the movie, like they don't understand me,
So I'm curious. So you first of all, before we talk about the score, you got to re-record some of your songs for this film, and so I'm curious, what was the process like? How did you choose which songs were going to appear? What was it like re-recording them? And then I guess at what point did Leo and Zach come into the conversation and we started talking about the actual like piecing the whole thing together, the whole kind of tapestry of music?
Yeah. Well, we Eric and I decided while we were writing the movie and coming with a whole arc that basically was going to be, from childhood until 1985. So it was all the songs in the early part of my career. It was the origin story. So it was like My Bologna, and another one, Rides the Bus, I Love Rocky Road, Eat It Like a Surgeon. And then sort of a late edition was Amish Paradise, which is from 1996. But that was because we needed a big set piece to finish the movie. And we figured by that point in the movie, nobody cares about what's real. So we just tacked that on there. And you guys, you can talk about how you came in and your timeline in terms of production.
Yeah, so Zach and Leo, I mean, how did you get involved with this project? Did you know Eric? Did you know Al? I'm curious, how did you get involved, and what were the, I guess, first conversations about score?
We know Eric. We've known Eric for many years. I actually did a show with him in 2015, this one season thing on Fox called Son of Zorn, that he emailed me through my website about. It was like a cold email. It's the only time in my entire life it's ever happened. And it turned into Eric, who's just been such a great friend and collaborator since. So, every couple months, Eric's the type of guy who you'll get a random phone call from him and he'll just tell you really excitedly kind of whatever's on his mind. It might have to do with work. It might not have to do with work. And at some point it was, hey, you remember that Weird Al movie that I was like talking about like a while ago? I think it's going to get greenlit. And I was like, oh, sweet. And like I was like, okay, well, we'll see if that happens, just because you never know in Hollywood. Like, and then like 2 weeks later, he calls again. He's like, hey, this movie's definitely happening. And then like another week later, he's like, yeah, this is definitely happening. We're like polishing the script, like it's going. And so I mean, we didn't start on the movie until after it had been shot. And it should be mentioned that this movie was made on an unbelievably impressive timeline. The shoot was 18 days long. Huge credit to everyone involved, like, and especially Eric for keeping the trains moving. And just, I feel like every department head on this movie just completely crushed it and was like a part of this vision. And we didn't start really until we didn't start on a locked cut, but it was like pretty finely tuned. And I'd say we did the whole score in like 4 weeks, maybe, Zach, right? Yeah.
Zach, I think your mic is on, but
oh, I will say that, you know, the score was done after the shoot, which is the normal timeline. But out of necessity, I had to record all my material before the shoot because Daniel was lip syncing to the songs.
Sure, yeah.
And also, I was about to leave on a 6-month tour, so it would have been very difficult for me to record things on the road. So we recorded all those songs. We knew, Eric and I had figured out exactly what parts of the songs were going to be in the movie, but I recorded entire versions of the songs because we figured out there might be a soundtrack album down the line. Yeah. And it was very odd for some of the, well, one in particular, Another One Rides the Bus, we'd never actually recorded that in a studio. The version on the album, you know, the master recording that everybody's familiar with, that was just a live performance on the Dr. Demento show, and Dr. Demento just happened to have a reel-to-reel tape recorder running for an air check. So that air check of the performance was the only version of the song that ever existed until last year, 42 years later, when I had to go into the studio to re-record it for the movie.
That's amazing. What was it like for you, like to do that, to get back in that headspace of you? Like, was it kind of like a mind, like messing with your mind a bit, like kind of? But
yeah, it was a little weird, and also, you know, because when I did it originally, I was like 20 years old, maybe. Yeah. So I had to get in that mindset of like, how did I sing when I was 20? And I listened to the original recording and I tried to get that untrained kind of voice, you know, going on. So it was a real interesting thing to like revisit my early self.
Wow, that's amazing. That's fantastic. So guys, for the score, for Zach and Leah, like, what were the first conversations that you had with Eric, and what was the tone that going to be? Because I think the key to a good parody score is, I think, just like playing it serious, but also just turning that melodrama dial like really high up to kind of get a little bit over dramatic. So I'm curious, how do you know what the right tone was going to be, and what were, I guess, the first conversations about what the music should be?
That's exactly, I think you said it like completely perfectly. Like we had to find a very sincere, authentic tone, and at the same time you take it to a level that like everyone can get on, and which really sells the film. And I think everyone really, you know, like Eric talks about how they tempt it with, you know, Alan Silvestri and Thomas Newman scores from like the early 90s. And it worked amazing. And we watched it and we're like, okay, like this already works really, really well. So we knew that like if we kind of went down this path, it was going to be great. And the first piece of score that we wrote was the ending, was Al's speech. And that was where we had our theme presentation of like our big Al theme that was going to be for the movie. And we showed it to Eric and he immediately liked it. And then from then on, it was like, you know, propagating what film composers do. They find all the different places to employ it. And we had so much fun just throughout the movie, finding all the different like weird genres and different spots that we can like employ the theme. And it really, it pays off pretty well, because I just think that we really love that type of score, and we never get to do that type of score. And I don't know if we'll ever be able to do that type of score again. So we'll see, but we just had such a blast doing it.
And Zach said most everything. The only thing I would add is like the score plays it straight, kind of, or it starts off playing it so straight and authentically, and like Zach said, sincere. And as the movie kind of unwinds into more and more unhinged territory, I would say the individual score moments sort of embrace parody a little more in terms of like, you know, the LSD trip is like such this kind of like over the top apocalyptic thing. And like the Amish cartoon or like animated section is kind of its own, just like real leaning hard to the fiddle. And so like we kind of kept our backbone and then just branched out into these ridiculous parodies from there.
When it becomes an action movie, it's an action movie score all of a sudden. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You just everything that was appropriate, but you just did it all straight, which made the comedy work.
There's something, universal about that type of like sincere, really orchestral film score where, we all saw this movie in Toronto. The world premiere was in Toronto. And I talk about this often, but like that showing, that world premiere was like electrifying. And I think that first time when Al's mom, finds the Hawaiian shirt behind the bed and the music swells and it cuts to black and it just says weird and we hear the theme.
Just cheers. Oh man.
Cheers.
So great.
Because you just immediately know what that score tells you. Okay, this is what the movie's gonna be.
We're off and running. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it tricky to find that balance though? Did you kind of have to, oh, we went too big here, we got to scale it back, or this is too small, we got to like get it a little bit more maybe syrupy and saccharine or something like that? Was there like a balancing like tight rope act that you had to find, or was it pretty kind of obvious, I guess, when you look at the performances and you kind of use that as your kind of gauge?
It was pretty clear because everyone had a very kind of unified vision of the tone going in, and the performances. I mean, Daniel's freaking amazing in this movie, and like he's just this. I don't know if you'd call the delivery like deadpan, but like just with like the conviction with which he brings to it, I feel like makes it very clear that you have to score it straight. And in fact, the only areas where I felt like we aired a little bit, and there's a few random scenes kind of scattered throughout the movie where V1 was probably like trying to be a little too funny. And then it's always funnier when it wasn't funny.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up. I mean, I always go back to look at those. What Elmer Bernstein did on Airplane, or Ira Newborn did on Naked Gun, which of course, Al was familiar with Naked Gun, and then of course he wrote, that amazing Spy Hard song, which is, I mean, those are all like perfect examples of how you just play. I mean, and the fact that this came out today or last year in today's culture is fantastic, because I always like, oh, this genre is like, I miss this genre so much, and I miss movies like this, and the fact that I can't think of Walk Hard might be the last one that kind of played around in this world, but this is just so personal and so like unique to Al and unique to the genre, and I just had such a good time. It was just so good. But for Zach, Leo, what was like maybe your was there any like a tricky or challenging scene to score, and was there anything that kind of threw for a loop where like it took maybe the extra tweaking to get it right?
We talk about this one often, but our first version of In Memoriam was to go off what Leo was just saying, was we played it way too kind of funny, and Leo describes it as the friends we made along the way version. It had a beat, it was like a rhythm, it was like nothing you had heard. It was almost like this weird palate cleanser to after Al dies, and Al was like, guys, what? I just died.
Yeah, that was sort of that's sort of like my one big note for the whole. I love the entire score, and that was the one thing was like, yeah, you're a little bit too happy about me being dead. I'm not sure. Not sure about that one.
So we ended up, doing our Yo-Yo Ma cello tribute, which in turn, of course, made it funny because it was we had to play. And I think the other one that took a while was Dr. Demento talking when Dr. Demento first
their first introduction. Yeah,
we were playing it a little too cute a few times. We played it kind of funny, and it was the way you would do almost like just a comedy score, like there was pizzicato and there were things like that, and again, the funnier version was the really emotional, sentimental version, and it just always played the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was like the most, I guess, creatively rewarding scene for you to score? Because I mean, you guys, I think we were kind of in a similar age where we grew up with this stuff, so it must have been just so fun for you to just dive in and kind of mimic the style, but also inject your voice into it as well. So I'm curious, for you guys as composers, what was the most creatively rewarding like scene?
Oh man, honestly, that's tough. There's like a short list probably of like 4 or 5 that are very near to us.
Top
like
5.
The diner fight which is kind of spins off into this insane John Wick territory. And the reason why I think it is that's kind of at the top of our list is because a lot of what you hear in that fight that does not sound like it is actually accordion, like run through.
You got
like
accordion
processing, and then there is also accordion that sounds like accordion, and it it comes in when it's kind of like a knife fight later, and it just what's actually very impressive to me about it is how many people notice the accordion and like come up to us after they see the movie and are like, the accordion in the diner fight is like amazing. And like, sorry, my dog is squeaking his favorite toy over there.
Oh, it's fine. It's barely coming in. We're good.
Great.
It adds ambiance. It's good.
Yeah. He's practicing his accordion for later. So that, I mean, it's just cool that everyone like recognized the accordion in that sequence.
Yeah.
I don't know, Zach, what are our other favorites?
I mean, Dad apologizes. When his dad reveals he's wearing the Hawaiian shirt in the factory, I think is like an all-time moment.
Yeah.
The trumpet, the high trumpet. We love, My Bologna Epiphany is up there. That was just,
that's a great scene.
Again, it's like we don't often get to just kind of do that, like in a very sincere way. That tone, that very earnest film score tone that I think is kind of gotten dated. If we had our
the
way,
Great American Hero story of the early 1990s, like it was a genre unto itself, and like it's not cool anymore, but it should be.
It should be.
Well, you mentioned accordion. You were able to get the accordion in there, which is had to have happened. I mean, it was perfect. Were there any kind of unique? You mentioned you were kind of processing it and making it sound. Were there any kind of unique tricks or instruments that you guys were using to kind of flesh out the score in funny and unique ways?
I don't think this was you guys. This might have been a sound editing thing, but in the LSD sequence, when Rainn Wilson is talking about making references to Eat It, you hear the synclavier notes from Eat It / Beat It, which they worked into the score. Were you guys involved in that?
No, I literally didn't know this. This is awesome.
Yeah, no, listen to that, because they were working the bam, those notes.
Oh,
He works into it really subtly, so you wouldn't hear it on the first time. But if you're tuned into it, you're like, oh yeah, they're like working in Eat It into the whole thing.
Yeah.
Sound designers are so cool, man.
Yeah.
They just like when you look at their like stack of like, this is one sound and it's like 8 sounds all combined. Like awesome. and like they have all these like inside jokes and putting them together. It's really impressive to me.
I mean, besides, we ran the accordion through the Kemper audio profile, like the guitar amp profiler basically, and just had like a lot of fun with that. And we put, we put echo effects and reverb for the epiphany moment while it's fluttering, this reverse kind of effect. It's a wild instrument. We were talking about it the other day with Al. It's just like, it's heavy. There's a lot of coordination involved. I was just very impressed just learning about the instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love that Al has kind of given, I guess, just like the accordion the spotlight that it deserves. I think a lot, and Al, maybe let's talk about. I know your love for polka is just amazing, and why do you love the accordion? Why is that your instrument? What attracted you to it? I guess from the very beginning.
Well, it was sort of foisted on me. I mean, my parents. I mean, one of the true things in the movie is I did in fact start taking accordion lessons because of a door-to-door salesman. Somebody came around to our house who was trying to drum up work for his music studio, and they offered accordion lessons and guitar lessons. And my parents, being the visionaries that they were, they said, "Oh, young Alfred would love the accordion." So when I was 7 years old, I started taking lessons. I can't imagine I was begging for accordion lessons, but they made that decision, and that was sort of, that's what I grew up with. So it is to this day the only instrument I can play well.
Well, it's amazing. I love it.
Not the best, but arguably the most famous, right?
There you go. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
We had Corey Pesaturo. He was the best.
Yeah. The accordion player who we had come play on the score is named Corey Pesaturo, and he is literally the world champion accordion player.
Oh, wow.
And his abilities are like a sight to behold and sound to behold.
We met him at
he's unbelievable.
He performed at the SEL Awards. That's how we met him.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. Well, you mentioned about, I think earlier you mentioned that you started with the finale and you kind of came up with the theme there. And I'm always curious about structuring scores and kind of finding the whole kind of 3-act structure of it. So I'm curious, you said you were working kind of not on a lock picture, but maybe like a work print or something, and there was temp score. And so was spotting kind of already determined by the time you came on, or did you have to kind of figure out what places really needed score and what places you needed to kind of pull back from and let the acting kind of do the comedic work?
It was pretty determined, but not so much because the temp, the temp was like mostly there, but kind of incomplete at the time. Cause like there was no studio reviewing that like cared a lot about the temp score type of thing. So it was kind of like half done until we started. And then Eric had a very clear idea of like ins and outs for every scene. I think it's like really one of his strengths among many. He's very good at spotting music. And so we would go in, and even if there wasn't temp in a scene, he would be like, we should come in exactly here and then like do this here and then come out exactly here. So we had like a pretty solid list to take us through. But we did start at the end and then go back to the beginning. And we kind of wrote it in order after that, but not totally in order.
Yeah. I mean, and do you, I mean, I'm sure it, I mean, I'm curious how you kind of keep that map in your head. Like, I always think of like composers have like that, you know, where you're looking for like a murder and there's like yarn and pins put, like, how do you structure a score? Do you just keep it between your ears like that? You know, when to hit the themes, and oh, we use that theme in this reel and we know when to kind of reprise it over here? Or is it something that you have kind of like a spreadsheet or something that we're like, all right.
Well, there is a spreadsheet.
I'm sure
there is a quite literal spreadsheet.
But that's like some of the most fun is like, you know, starting with like the speech and then saying, well, where does that, but like, where could we take that vibe specifically? I was thinking, you know, Wolfman Jack, you know, that worked really well. I'm trying to think, like, you propagate these like little, these seeds from like one cue, you know, and like you start to like explore the different vibes. And I feel like, you know, Reel 1 has a lot of the very earnest, kind of happy John Williams-y style, like early 90s Home Alone type music. And like that was its own little plant, right? So like there's like, we find the different spots and see how much we can get done with that. And then of course we have our, you know, Columbia music that is its own, we have to do our own thing with that. So like, I think, and the way that we work too is often very much like we start something up based on kind of who's more enthusiastic about the scene, like who's just like, who has an idea, and then, you know, we share it and we work on it together. But that's kind of how we start. So like, you know, we can cover a lot of ground that way, just the two of us. But it really
so is that always, I mean, is that how you guys also work in Cobra Kai? You just kind of throw stuff up and be like, who likes this, who's I guess feeling it more, and then you take that, and then do you guys
we don't even go down the list.
It's
usually someone just says like, hey, I've got an idea for this, like the minute we leave a spotting session. And so then we'll just go home and start working on stuff and then start swapping.
I have to say, Eric and I sort of worked the same way in the screenplay, because we came up with a story together, and then we divided it up into 22 sections, and we kind of took the parts that we felt most passionate about. It's like the diner fight scene. I was like, you know, that's more of a director's medium, so you should do that, and let me do the Pablo Escobar bit at the compound, and we just worked on what we felt, you know, the strongest about. But then of course we punched up each other's stuff, so the entire process was like continually rewriting each other, so which was a lot of fun.
I'm curious, Al, because like, so when you're writing dialogue like that, and you know that there's going to be an actor that's going to impersonate that and then bring it to life and embody that, how much of it is like, are you imagining, like, I guess how big are you seeing it in your head versus what the eventual, I guess, performance is going to be? Is it always kind of exactly how you pictured it, or did it completely different
when it actually happens?
Well,
you know, I mean, sometimes it's exactly what you had in your head, which is an amazing thing. To see it like happening in 3 dimensions in front of you, and sometimes you get surprised. I mean, some things work out even better than you'd imagine, because the actors just bring so much to it that's not on the written page. So it's always well, not always, but it's usually a very nice surprise.
And when you're like really focusing on a certain genre, do you just go back and rewatch? Do you have biopics kind of burn in your brain, or do you go back and rewatch certain ones to just like familiarize yourself with the tropes?
Eric and I both, you know, watched a fair amount of biopics to kind of get the format down, and we didn't have to watch a whole lot, because we found out very early on they're all kind of the same. They all really follow this very kind of strict format, and it was pretty easy to tap into that.
And who how did you choose your wig? I'm just curious. You're in the movie that you're wearing. You're nice, perfect. studio executive wig.
My personal
Your
wig.
wig,
Yeah,
your personal wig.
Well, that was based off of Tony Scotti, who was in fact the president of my record company. So the hair department just looked at Google image search pictures of Tony Scotti from the '80s, and that's what we went for.
Oh, that's
Al,
awesome.
Al, did you always know you were gonna play that part?
Kind of, yeah, because in the original Funny or Die video, I played the record company executive, and that wasn't that version wasn't really supposed to be or look like Tony Scotti, but this new movie we wanted to make completely accurate, so it had to look like.
And Al, do you ever see yourself coming back like full time in front of like a starring role again? Because UHF and I mean they're just so good. Like
I've never ruled it out. Thank you. It's a miracle when anything gets made. So I'm just happy Weird got made. And I hope that there's some kind of future for me in TV and or film. But that's something that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean your voiceover work is fantastic. You've done a lot of great little especially on some stuff that we produce, Adventure Time and Uncle Grandpa. You're always here and close enough, but but I think you're a fantastic performer too. I mean, in terms of acting, like comedic timing, like UHF is when Shout re-released it recently. I was like, yes, finally it's on Blu-ray. So
yay.
Well, guys, I'm to I guess wrap up the conversation. I'm curious. Oh, maybe we'll go with all three of you guys. Al, you can talk about just the state. I want to ask, what do you think the state of parody is, like just parody as a genre today, and what is the future of the genre, whether it's music or film? And then Zach and Leo, you can talk about maybe the score, like how I'm just curious because like,
oh gosh,
I feel like it's kind of a dead genre. Like I can't, like that's why I was so happy to see this movie get made. Like, is it possible in today's like pop culture to kind of take something, lampoon it a bit, and have fun with it? Without being too mean and maybe making people angry, but just you found like the perfect balance, I think. But I also picking yourself too is much easier, I guess, to make fun of too. But
that's a big question to answer. There aren't a whole lot of movies like this, or even comedies like this. And there's a number of reasons why. I mean, it seems like for the last decade or so, the theatrical movies have been gravitating toward either Marvel movies, like the huge big movies, or very small indie movies, and a lot of comedies are somewhere in the middle ground. So those are a little harder to get greenlit. It's tough to say. There for a while, a lot of comedy and spoof movies are being made, and the quality on those, I'll be polite and say they varied. The glory days of the ZAZ movies, like Top Secret and Airplane and Naked Gun, we haven't seen that for a while. So I'd love to think that maybe this movie could help usher in a new era of that kind of movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see that. And Zach, Leo, your take on, is it even possible to like say you made I think they've made like a superhero spoof movie, but I feel like the scores today have, even though there's some great stuff being done, I feel like it would be so difficult to parody like certain writing styles of the past 15 years, right? Like, I'm curious, how would you approach that?
Well, we do a lot of comedy, like, and every year it becomes less and less comedic, even though technically they're comedies. And I think there's like kind of this interesting thing that happened with like film music and like sort of the direction of it, where like in like 2010 even, you might have like a movie that has like a scene. I'm actually thinking about something from my past as like an assistant, where there's like a silly game of like capture the flag happening on screen, and like it's like the direction is to basically, let's score it like it's Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, it'll be really funny to like really lean hard into this thing, but that's not what's happening on screen. But in 2023, you'd actually just have like a pirate setting for a show, and you would write an authentic pirate score for the show, but then the show would happen to be funny. It's like a different, like, this thing happened where I guess like the settings became like more literal within comedy. It isn't just like kind of joking about like, well, wouldn't it be funny if it was this? It actually just is this.
That's interesting.
I personally think the best like parody movie ever is Galaxy Quest.
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
so
like
good.
obsessed
Great
with it.
score.
And like,
So good.
and the score is unfreaking believable.
David's
and
the best
it's
scores.
and it's
Yeah.
not really making fun of Star Trek at all. It's just this beautiful like thing that sounds like Jerry Goldsmith could have written.
Can I take the baton from that? Because that is just like
Yes.
such a perfect example of kind of what I was gonna say, where it's like almost like score with these types of movies and projects is like exempt from parody status because it's
Right.
always approached, as we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, from this very sincere way. David Newman knew what he was doing when he was writing that theme. And it's resonant, and like I still remember that theme, and I don't even know how well the movie did, but like we all, especially film score nerds, like love that music. And like, you know, we often talk about with Cobra Kai, like there's a world where the music of Cobra Kai is a parody, where it's we're making fun of that, and we're not at all. Like it is, we just genuinely love like 80s action music and synth music and stuff like that. So it's almost like, I think if the heart is there, and I mean it's just the way that like Al approaches his music too. It's like it always comes from a place of admiration and of like love and stuff like that. I there's something very interesting with how music really ties into parody, and I think this was such an amazing masterclass on it, working on this film. Because
you guys did such a good job. Because the last one that stood out to me, I think, was like Teddy Shapiro's Tropic Thunder score. I thought that was like
also an
so
amazing movie, just so good.
Fantastic. I mean, you take that out, it's literally like a Black Hawk Down, war movie score. If you take it away from the picture, and just like yours, you take your score away from it, and you kind of go over the top in some areas, but there's sections that's like, this is great sentimental, like heartwarming stuff, and really it just completely plays like really emotionally. So it works so well when it's put on that visual thing. But well, guys,
thank you.
Congratulate you guys for the movie, the score, the songs, and Al for helping bring this to the world. And I mean, you must be just so happy to see it kind of finally get out. And
we're all happy.
But I mean, and you guys did such a fantastic job. So thank you so much for your time tonight, for sharing a little bit about your worlds, and this was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.